welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And I'm Meg Hofdahl.
And this week we're talking about Meg's pick,
Leprechaun!
Do you love this movie?
No, I've never seen this movie before.
Okay, neither have I, thank God.
Okay, so here's why I chose it, though. So I saw one of the sequels when I was a kid. And I've always wanted to see the first one because I saw one of the sequels and there were boobs in it. And it was one of the most awkward situations of my life because my dad and I were watching it together and I was like that age where it's just like awful. I was probably like 10 and it was like a really prolonged showing boobs. I don't know. Somebody tweet us if you know which one it is that shows boobs for like a long time. They're out in a garage and there's some like spinning blades, I think, involved. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I was so horrified that like I couldn't even handle the rest of the movie because I was just like, oh my God, I saw boobs with my dad. So I always thought like I need to see the first Leprechaun and sort of see what this is all about and like actually pay attention and not be. It's just like that Onion article you were saying.
There's that Onion article. It's a headline. I mean, there's probably an article. You just usually look at the headlines because they're funny on their own. But family white knuckles it through sex scene in movie. Because there's nothing more awkward, especially when you're young, to have a sex scene in a movie with your parents. But also, you mentioned there might be blades involved. I think you were just so uncomfortable you started picturing your most traumatic moment, which is the helicopter cutting up a zombie's head.
Maybe. I've gone through a lot of therapy over this moment. And, like, I'm the only person who saw boobs in a movie with their dad.
And then I pictured a zombie getting his head chopped off. Like,
and I have weird sex problems now, so no, I'm fine. And so we watched Leprechaun. This is my first time, so
mine too.
Really, I didn't know if it was, so I chose it, and I knew Jennifer Aniston was in it, so that was interesting.
So, first of all, I mean, I guess let's get into the movie and then we can talk about things as they happen, but I didn't know if you loved this movie, so the comments that I wrote down, I'm just trying to be very, like, not politically correct, but, you know, just wrote them with care because I didn't want to offend you.
That's nice, but I think you should never hold back, you know? I mean, because there are going to be times we're going to disagree. I don't think this is one we're going to disagree on, but, okay, there's just so much to say. But first of all, this movie came out in 1993.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's starring Jennifer Aniston, as I said, some other randos, and Warwick Davis. Now, I do want to say, Warwick Davis is amazing, and he started out acting very young, and he was in Return of the Jedi, and he's been in every Star Wars film, like all the new Star Wars films as well.
Were you a Willow fan too?
No, I was not a Willow fan, but I think he's amazing. He puts his heart and soul into being this leprechaun. I'll give him that. And he's running around in like high heels.
Yeah.
And there's have you watched Life is Too Short? Oh my God. It's hilarious. It's a British show. Warwick Davis is British. And it's in the vein of like David Brent, like Ricky Gervais type shows, like that kind of humor. In fact, Ricky Gervais is involved in the show. It's hilarious. There's one joke in it. I won't even try to go there, but like Luke and I don't know if I've ever laughed that hard before or since. So it's hilarious. If you guys ever have the chance, check out Life is Too Short starring Warwick Davis. He makes fun of himself. Like he knows, you know, he's very silly. And anyway, I would recommend watching that instead of Leprechaun.
So I just don't get Leprechaun. Like, I was like, oh, is this going to be scary? But it's not scary at all. It's ridiculous. I mean, is it supposed to be funny? I mean, I know it's supposed to be funny, but it's not scary at all. Why is it a horror movie?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's so many proper comedy horrors out there.
Fox Hofdahl, what do you have to say for yourself?
There's swearing in this.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to put that at the beginning of every episode.
Yeah. That's our disclaimer now. Anyway, yeah, I mean, there are proper comedy horrors out there. They exist. And they're some of my favorite movies. This movie's not funny or scary. So it's not one of those. I mean,
Like, what is it? I mean, do you watch this on St. Patrick's Day? I mean, now I'm reducing it to a stereotype, but like,
well, I mean, I think it's already gone down that route.
the four-leaf clover is like a crucifix is the first thing I wrote.
Oh.
Exclamation point, question mark?
Wow.
And I'm like, Meg loves this movie.
The four-leaf clover is like a crucifix.
It is
Well,
like a crucifix is for
I
vampires.
see. Oh, I see. I thought you were going like all like meta, like religious,
No.
and you're like, this movie is an allegory for Jesus Christ.
Well, yes, Meg, it's very deep.
I mean, I think you watch this movie high or drunk. Like, I
Okay.
think that's the. Don't you think this is the type of movie? Okay, now here's the thing. It doesn't take itself seriously, which is really good for it, and I think that was important in the construction of this movie. But it actually should be funny, and it actually should be scary. And if you really think about it, you could make a leprechaun scary. Yeah, I think it's possible to make a leprechaun scary. Like, as I was watching it, I'm like, they should, like, try to reboot this and make this really scary.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe some of the other Leprechaun movies are scary. Do you remember the other one with the boobs that you saw? And
Only that trauma. Maybe it wasn't even a leprechaun movie. Who even knows?
I agree. I mean, it's not scary at all. And yeah, it's okay. So here's the thing that maybe I shouldn't compare it to this, but Chucky is scary because he's a murderous doll. And even though he's cute looking, he gets less scary when he's more punny, like in later sequels. So, and I feel like Leprechaun, he should have just been scary as F instead of trying to be so cleverly funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that they shouldn't have had him in, like, the buckled shoes and the hat and stuff. I think they should have been like, here's what a leprechaun really looks like. It's not like the dude from Lucky Charms. It's like, here's what a leprechaun really looks like, and it's, like, scary as fuck. Like, I could see that being scary. And having the concept of, and he wants his gold. Like, I think that could have worked in a way. This movie has so many problems. Like, oh my god. Let's rewind back to the beginning where this movie takes place in North Dakota, which is interesting and odd. Our neighbors to the west. There's a tarantula in the basement, but it's in North Dakota.
We don't have tarantulas up here, you guys.
No, I would move if we had them. So that, like, there's that. But let's just talk about her for a minute. What do you think about her character?
Okay, so first of all, I was kind of not paying attention like right away, and I didn't realize it was her dad right away, and I was like, is that her love interest? That's disgusting.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that'd be gross.
I don't know. If you know me, then you'll know I'm not a big Jennifer Aniston fan. She looks exactly the same and she's beautiful. I just don't know that she's a great actress.
Yeah, I don't know if she's a great actress either. I feel like you could take this as like an inspiration. Like, we all have leprechauns in our lives and we all have friends in our lives. Meaning, like, we all have our shit we have to do, and then we all have our, like, successful things. Sometimes you have to do the shit to get to the success. And this is a great example of, like, she's literally in a movie called Leprechaun. And apparently it's her film debut.
Yeah.
But she obviously goes on to be a huge mega star that married other mega stars, and she had her own success, lots of it. This is the only one she's in. There's Leprechaun 2, Leprechaun 3. There's Leprechaun 4 in space. There's Leprechaun in the Hood and Leprechaun Back to the Hood. Which, I mean, at least, I guess, I'm assuming that means that there are some African-American people, which there were not in this one. And, so, I mentioned this, that I watched it. There was one day where we were, like, doing stuff around the house. I'm like, well, Leprechaun's not going to watch itself. I have to go watch this ridiculous movie. And I mentioned it to my husband. He's like, they rebooted that. I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, yeah, they did. So I looked it up, and there's a movie called Leprechaun Origins that came out in 2014, I believe. Have you ever heard of it? Kelly's shaking her head.
I can't even muster the energy.
Look at Leprechaun 4 in space. I'm just showing her, like, the cover.
No, why does he have to have the hat on? Like, that's not scary.
And why is he in space? And now, did you know there's a new... So Leprechaun Origins, by the way, did not have Warwick Davis in it. And he says he doesn't know why they didn't ask him to be in it. He's in every other single Leprechaun one. And he's like, I don't know. They just never asked me to be in it. So that made me kind of sad.
That is sad. And, like, wouldn't you want his name?
I know. But he's not going to... So now, next year, on St. Patrick's Day, a new Leprechaun movie is coming out on Sci-Fi Channel. And it is a sequel to the Jennifer Aniston one. And it's ignoring all the other sequels. And it's going to be the second one now, not with Warwick Davis in it. So if you are a fan, that's exciting.
If you love the Leprechaun movies, good for you. Because you know what? I love some crappy things, too. I'm sorry.
You just couldn't say that without being a bitch.
Oh, my God. Meg, do you like her love interest?
I mean, he's so 1993. Like, he's just so... Oh my gosh, and then there's the precocious child who, like, can't say his lines really well, so it just comes out weird. And then there's, like, the like, mentally disabled man. Kelly didn't want to say it. She put the microphone back at me so I could try to say it PC. Oh. Yeah, I mean, okay. So I can see the charm of...
But I'm bunching.
Yeah. I can see the charm of, like, how it's supposed to be cheeky, like Freddy. But, you know, we had a problem with Freddy, too, and he's better at being cheeky, you know? I don't even know where to begin, honestly.
Let's not talk about the movie much. Let's just talk about the things that it made us think about. One thing it made me think about is superstitions and, you know, like the four-leaf clover and stuff. Are you superstitious at all? Do you believe in superstitions, or do you do things just out of habit? For example, I do knock on wood. I don't actually believe that does anything, but I do say knock on wood and I knock on something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in, like, you know, ghosts and things like that. But there's this idea sometimes I can have is, like, if you put something in the universe, like, say something... I think we kind of all have that, where it's like, it's that knock on wood thing, where, yeah, it's like, you don't want to say, like, oh, I've never broken my arms, or something. You just feel like you're, like, waiting, you know, it's like you're just baiting fate to do something. So, yeah, I could probably be a little knock on wood superstitious. Otherwise, I mean, I'll open an umbrella in the house, I'll break a mirror and be fine, and I mean, I can't think of, there's probably things that we do we don't even realize that we're doing that are superstitious, you know? I bet there are things, well, like people will say bless you or whatever, like there are things that we do every day probably that I'm not even realizing that's why.
Yeah, true. I mean, I guess I don't walk under ladders, but there's not a lot of ladders in my life.
I'd like to test this theory. I also like black cats. I had a black cat named Maisie, and she was nice, and she crossed my path many times. And maybe that's why my life is in shambles.
And you break mirrors all the time.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's all making sense.
They threw shoes to distract him, Meg. I can't even say that with a straight face.
It's like I can see how it could be funny and cute, but it's just not. It's really embarrassing and bad, and it makes my eyes water.
Mine too, and I can't stop laughing because I just feel so embarrassed. And when I'm looking at my notes, and I thought you loved this movie because you picked it, and this is why we don't talk about things ahead of time, because then it's more fun to be revealed on air. Everything that I wrote, I'm just trying to find the positives.
Oh, that's nice. Let's read.
Okay, so ready? I'm just going to read my notes.
Yeah.
I appreciate that they all saw him and know that he exists.
Oh, that was really scraping the bottom.
Instead of being like, oh, I saw Leprechaun, no one else did, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's true. That's a thing that happens.
And then right after that, like, I literally couldn't think of anything nice to write. I wrote, this isn't my jam, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. There's so many bad things in this movie. It's also just it's a poorly written movie. It's a poorly shot movie. It's a poorly edited movie. Like, it's just an all-around not a good movie.
And there's so many men in it, too.
There's a lot of men in it, and this is what I always complain about. Here I go again. But they stole the climax from the woman because she goes to the place, the old folks' home, to find out what happened. That guy is, like, in the elevator, like, upside down. Do you remember that? And he's, like, dying. But he's able to tell her, like, what she needs to know. And then he's like, it's too late for me. Oh, God. But she has the knowledge of what needs to happen with the four-leaf clover. She goes to the clover patch, and she's looking for the clover. But what ends up happening is the little boy and her love interest end up killing what's his face, the leprechaun. Does he have a name, or is it just leprechaun? Okay. And this is a prime example of the woman went and got the knowledge. She comes back with the knowledge. She's trying to do it, and a man pretty much takes the knowledge and everything out of her hands. And I mean, this is how, and this is what these incel man children can't handle if there's a movie where a woman actually gets the climax.
And so it's because they've never made a woman climax in their lives.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad you brought that together, because it's always there. Like, it's always, the climax is always, yes, thank you.
So the last note I wrote is slingshot for the win, because they use a slingshot again. And I feel like that's been in a couple movies now, or TV shows, where a kid, it's always a boy, isn't it? Or is it?
Not it.
It's a girl, thankfully. Uses a slingshot to defeat some creature, which is good. You know, it's like David and Goliath kind of thing, but
it's just so bad. Like, he finds the Lucky Charms. They have a Lucky Charms joke. I mean, it's not Lucky Charms, but you know. And yeah, they throw shoes at him to distract him.
And you know, the phone lines are cut and stuff, and they're trapped. I mean, it's a good setup. Oh, they try to call and they don't believe them, and they think it's a prank, and they're out there and injured, and I don't know. It's so, like you said, horror comedy can be done so well, and you love it, and it can still be scary but funny, but this is neither.
Like, think of, like, Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Like, a really good horror comedy. It's possible. And I honestly believe that you could make a good Leprechaun movie. Like, because I think you can make a good horror movie out of anything, really. And I think, like I said, if they had taken away the buckled shoes and the hat and stuff, and I know they want to be cheeky, but I think that's not our sense of humor. And, you know, it's like when he runs through the fence and it's like a cutout of him, and when he pogo sticks that guy to death. It's like, some people, like, that's just hilarious to them. Like, that's their sense of humor. And, you know, clearly it resonated. There's a lot of sequels.
So we've offended more than half our audience, I think.
You know, I think everybody can appreciate different horror, and just because we don't like it doesn't mean that doesn't mean anything. Like, I mean, I don't know. There are movies, like, I love Mars Attacks. Nobody else likes that movie. Like, there are just movies that we all like. There's something in it that we like and enjoy, and some people, like, that's their sense of humor. And also, like, you know, I was talking about the traumatic experience with my dad. They're also on the flip side of that. I think something that we've sort of mined when doing this podcast is that there are a lot of, like, feelings and nostalgia that come up when you watch some of these movies. And for some people, they watched Leprechaun on a summer night with their cousins, or they watch Leprechaun every St. Patrick's Day, or, like, there's something, even though the movie itself maybe is not that good, it's about the feelings it evokes, and maybe what path it led you down. Maybe you saw Leprechaun and it was your first horror movie, like, you know, something like that, where it's like, sometimes even though it's a bad movie, we can appreciate that it's important to someone.
That's why it's so fascinating to come into this podcast and do what we're doing, because we get to watch for the first time movies that maybe if we had watched them when we were 7 or 8 or 15, it would hold some sort of nostalgia, and we'd be like, oh, I love this part. And at the same time, we can go into a movie that we've never seen and we've avoided for some reason, and we end up loving it. And now, even as adults. So, true. It's sometimes it's more embedded in nostalgia than taste. But this just isn't our jam.
No, and I mean, I know there are bad movies that I like because it resonated at that moment in time, and you still have that sort of warm, fuzzy feeling for it. And there are people that argue that this is a good movie. Go ahead, argue that. That's fine. I would disagree. I think it's sloppily put together. I think Warwick Davis gives it his all. But I mean, and I guess his makeup's not too bad. I guess, they did a pretty good job for 93 on his makeup.
The melting part at the end is pretty gross. Like, that was well done.
Yeah, that was pretty well done. So, I mean, it's not a complete trash fire, but it's pretty close. I mean, and it just, her character, she's whiny. She doesn't, I mean, although if I saw a tarantula in the basement in my dad's hovel in North Dakota, I might get the fuck out of there too.
Yeah, I didn't like anybody.
No.
I didn't care.
Yeah. One thing here's something they really should have worked on. He freaking swallowed the gold. We should have seen the leprechaun take his entrails out and get the gold out.
Well, I was hoping to see that.
I was like, okay, that'll be good at least when he grabs into his stomach and gets the. But it's like they didn't know who they wanted this movie for. I was wondering when I was watching. I'm like, I wonder if Campbell's watching it with you, because I feel like a kid might appreciate it in like a sort of gateway into horror or something.
So it's funny because I will watch stuff whenever I get the chance. Sometimes the kids are awake, sometimes they're not. Vienna walked into the room when I was watching this movie, and she's like, "What is this?" I'm like, "It's for Horror Rewind." She's like, "This doesn't even look scary." She's 4.
I mean, she's right. There was not one moment I was scared or worried or stressed that anything. I mean, it was dumb. I really hope I don't ever have to watch that again or any of the sequels.
I agree. But Lisa has created a drink for us this week. Lisa, take it away and tell us, what have you created for Leprechaun?
Hi horror friends, Lisa here. This week we're going to make a drink inspired by the movie Leprechaun, which I like to call Crock of Gold. For this drink, you will need a Collins glass, a plate, ice, a lemon wedge, green sprinkles, some gold decorative flakes. I found mine at Michael's. Most craft stores with baking sections can help you out. Cinnamon, Irish whiskey, and hard cider. All right, let's get started. Go ahead and grab your Collins glass and take your lemon wedge. You're just going to run it around half of the rim. Then pour some of those green sprinkles out onto the plate and get those onto the rim of your glass where you've put the lemon juice. Next, fill your glass with ice. Go ahead and put 2 shakes of cinnamon on top of that ice. Forgot you'll want your measuring device. Go ahead and pour in an ounce of your Irish whiskey. By pouring that over the ice, it'll move all of the cinnamon down. And then go ahead and fill the rest of the glass with your hard cider. Go ahead and give that a nice little stir. And then pour the gold flakes, decorative flakes, all over the top. And it looks like you found yourself a crock of gold. Cheers, horror friends.
It's time for us to rank Leprechaun, the movie. We are so sorry, Leprechaun fans, but this one just isn't for us. 4-leaf clovers, what do you think?
Yeah, 4-leaf clovers with gum wadded up into it.
Out of 0 to 10 4-leaf clovers with gum wadded up into them, ready to shoot with a slingshot into the leprechaun and melt him, or will you kill him? How many do you give Leprechaun? 0 being you hated it, 10 being it's a perfect movie.
I'm going to give it a 4, which I'm giving it some because I think that some of the practical effects are pretty good, and it's kind of interesting to watch Jennifer Aniston in her first movie role, and it's not offensive.
Yeah, I was thinking about the movies that I've given a 0 to or lower, and it's because they made something terrible purposely, and it's offensive and wrong. This movie isn't offensive and wrong, it's just not right. I'm giving it a 3. 3 4-leaf clovers. If you know of a good Leprechaun movie that we might enjoy, that's a little less cheeky, that's scary, tweet us, tell us, email us. We want to know. We're looking for good movies. So, don't be afraid. The Leprechaun fans aren't listening anymore. Right?
Yeah, no, they've long gone. But yeah, no, honestly though, if somebody messaged us and said, you need to watch Leprechaun 3, it's like the best thing ever, like I will listen to that. Like I would be intrigued then. But I need to get that message.
Yeah. I'm going to create a fake email account and email you. And be like, every fake email will be a different Leprechaun movie, so you have to watch them all.
You're like catfishing me.
I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that. What a waste of life.
Yeah, the joke's on you. You're making all these fake accounts of people I have to believe like Leprechaun movies.
Horror Rewind listener, we hope you're having a great week. We want you to email us, not catfish us, okay? So until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
I wanted to say something like Irish, but then I was afraid it was going to sound... What do Irish people say to say goodbye? Goodbye?
Toodaloo? I don't know. Like, what is an Irish goodbye? I mean, I think